back to Marvel Good Yay, the spin-off podcast of the Geek Easy podcast, where we're going back and rewatching all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe films leading up to the release of Avengers Endgame. I'm Pixel Dan.
I'm Jonathan Leonard.
And Jaron McCaffrey.
And today we are discussing Avengers Age of Ultron. Or as my son calls it, Age of Voltron. Because he just can't distinguish the two words, no matter how many times I try to correct him. You want to kick us off, John?
My youngest, who is not quite two, only wants to watch Elmo, and it's one of the only words she ever says.
Yeah.
So when we were turning this on, she kept asking for Elmo, Elmo, Elmo. So I said, okay, fine, honey, we'll watch Avengers: Age of Elmo. And my son, like, his eyes lit up, and he just took that and ran with it. Started telling me the story, what was going on, how the fights were going, and everything. I'm like, this is bananas.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
Kids and their words.
Yep.
All right. Avengers: Age of Ultron, the follow-up to the first Avengers movie and a whole bunch of other movies.
Yeah.
Theoretically, the end of Phase 2, but then we found out it wasn't.
Yeah.
Because Ant-Man actually ends Phase 2. Joss Whedon's second.
I feel like that's a like we're just getting punked. I don't feel like that's a thing.
It's a real thing, man. Hey, it makes sense. It's like an epilogue, you know.
It's in the Phase 2 box set.
Yeah, that's how the box sets work.
No, that's just
that's how Marvel has proclaimed it. I am not one to argue with the mighty Marvel. They
proclaimed it. Somebody came in and they were like, "Hey, how funny would it be if we just ended Phase 2 on Ant-Man instead of Ultron?"
Yeah.
Joss Whedon's second outing on a Marvel movie, and the honeymoon was over, as it turns out, which is not a declaration on the quality of movie. I guess it is a little bit, but it is funny as you know, as somebody who reads behind the scenes stories, usually after the movies come out. Mm-hmm. The tonal shift from 2012 when he made Avengers and 2015 when he made Age of Ultron. Like, I felt like this movie broke him for a while.
Yeah.
You know, which was sort of a bummer on many levels.
Right.
But from a box office perspective, we're looking at $460 million domestic, $946 million foreign, for a total cum of $1.4 billion. So one of the many Marvel movies in the billion-dollar range now. On a budget of $250 million. We in the business call that a financial success. Then you get into the reception on this one, which was lukewarm, I would say. This is one of those movies, again, I don't know of many people who hate this movie, but you don't get a lot of people singing its praises either. It's got its flaws, we'll get into as we discuss here. It's also got its successes. I think it's a good movie. I really like a lot of the things they did here. It does get convoluted at times. This is when Marvel gets full range into some of the world-building stuff that starts to take a little bit of precedence over storytelling. It's not a mistake they make often, but it happens in here a couple of times. Phase 2, I would say, always feels like the weak phase of the MCU to this point, which is weird, because then you go back and watch it. I mean, we've been rewatching it now, and I really like Iron Man 3. Thor: The Dark World fits into that description pretty well as far as being the weak phase, but then you run into Captain America: Winter Soldier, which is one of their best. You run into Guardians of the Galaxy, which is not a weak movie in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I really feel like a lot of that impression might come from Age of Ultron, because it does not have the feel of that first Avengers movie at all.
Right.
Like, as good as this movie is, it felt a little disappointing walking out of it, because it just did not hit on all those same cylinders.
Right.
And I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy, which had came out before this with a band of unknowns, did it better.
You're right.
Which is weird to say.
You're right.
But you walk out of the completely surprising team-up movie that you never saw coming and absolutely adored, and less than a year later, you walk into the one that you think you're going to feel that way about, and you walk out going, it's fine.
Right.
That's a bummer, you know?
Yep.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, I mean, that's it. We'll see you guys next time. No, I feel like you totally nailed the overall feeling on this movie.
Yep.
And that's exactly how I still felt after watching it this time around. This is one that I haven't watched as many times over. This is probably my third or fourth time watching this movie compared to like Guardians and the first Avengers, that I've watched multiple times. Thor Ragnarok I've seen so many times at this point. But this one I haven't seen near as much, and so it's been a while since I've watched this one. And even this time around, I felt that exact same thing all the way through it. It just didn't feel like it was quite there for me. There are a lot of little things in it that I like, and I can appreciate the world building that they're doing, but it does hurt the overall flow a lot. You're totally right where this really feels like they kicked it up a notch as far as the world building goes. It was kind of amazing to realize it was this long ago that they started talking about Wakanda.
Yeah.
And how long it took us to get to Black Panther from this movie. Yep. But like they started sowing the seeds of Black Panther all the way back here. So that was kind of cool.
Because we got Ulysses Claw in this movie.
Yep, Claw was...
sort of his mini origin story.
Yep, Claw's in the movie. Yeah, getting his arm ripped off by Ultron. And there's lots of vibranium in this movie. So they really start talking about they introduce the vibranium into the world outside of Cap's shield as kind of a big deal, as more than just it's a strong metal, the technology, all that good stuff. Like that's a thing that started happening here, and this is long before Black Panther showed up. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting in hindsight to go back and realize how far back they were really building that stuff. So I can appreciate it, but that scene specifically does almost feel like it's a little out of place, where it's like they go on the side quest in a video game to go stop Claw, while they're in the process of this whole Ultron thing. And I know that it ties together with Ultron, but it still felt that way. It still felt like a weird side quest, and so I definitely get that a lot in this.
So I really like this. I think that Phase 2 feels like a weaker phase because it's a darker phase, and
it's the Empire Strikes Back.
MCU. and it kind of tells some more complex stories, with Iron Man 3 and Tony Stark's whole PTSD thing, and is he Iron Man? Is he wrecked? Is he going to be Iron Man? We'll just skip talking about Thor: The Dark World.
But so good.
But Captain America: Winter Soldier was, who can he trust, and all about tearing down the shield the shield organization that we had set up.
Yep.
In the Avengers, just rip that all down.
Yep.
And
after they gave him a show.
Right. And then we get to Age of Ultron, and the storyline is all about ripping the Avengers down. I think that this is a stronger story than Avengers. I am really into this story, the story of Age of Ultron. But as an Avengers, it's almost like the story needs to end with nobody getting along. And they just don't go for that.
Didn't do the follow through.
They build up the team falling apart, and everybody's kind of little separate stuff. And I really love, you get to see so much character interplay here. And whereas in the first Avengers, was just such a fireworks display, And it's like, I can't believe we got here. This is so awesome. And so anytime we get to see somebody play off each other, it's kind of flashy, maybe it's a superhero fight, maybe it's, whether it's Thor and Hulk cutting loose or,
There's a novelty aspect to it.
Yeah, and in this one...
Not in a bad way. But.
Yeah, no. And in this one, we're starting to get to see the characters play off each other a little more, And I really like that. I think there's a lot to be said for that. And to the point it almost feels like, because and there's even the part at one point Ultron says something about, I have the one thing they'll never have, which is unity, but then they never really give them like a good reason to be unified again, other than Ultron being there, to where you almost feel like they needed to lean a little more heavily on like, maybe we win because we're not, we're different, almost like a Borg collective type thing, what I mean? Like our diversity is our strength, and instead, they just went for like, well, what if there's a big robot fight in the end,
And I think that's one of the, it's one of the weaker Act 3s, I think, and part of that is because it felt like a recreation of the first Avengers ending, not exactly
but also
necessarily, but
much weaker.
Yeah, exactly.
There was none of the, in the one there, even just the one scene where we get, Cap and Widow on the street, and then Iron Man flies by, and then we follow Iron Man as he flies up the building, kills a couple things, and then there's Hawkeye on top of the building, and then the big whale comes by with Thor and Hulk on the back of it. We don't get anything like that in this one. We get one scene where we
kind of get that in the beginning.
Yes.
At the opening, but nothing in the end.
That's right.
And then one thing we do in the end, we do get the big team shot, except it's bigger now because the team is bigger. And I really feel like that's one of those things that probably looked great on paper. The idea of just doing it again, but with the expanding roster.
Right.
But man, when it played out in the actual movie, it just looks like a carbon copy that's just not as good. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like a weaker thing. Like you're literally just doing the exact same thing again. Right. And it just didn't. You don't get any oomph from that.
Yep.
I will say you were talking about how like they didn't really play on like them still not getting along at the end, because they did kind of come back together at the end, and they left and they all kind of went their separate ways, but like they seemed on good terms. However, this does play into Civil War, which is coming up pretty quick. So at least they didn't totally mend the fences and get all best friends again.
Yeah.
Like the one thing that this movie does is it has some pretty significant
developments,
side effects going forward. Because the Sokovia Accords becomes a big deal going forward. This whole Civil War thing happens. So there's definitely some animosity between all of them still that's really going to play out in the future.
Yes.
So it's still there.
Yes.
It's just I totally see what you mean though.
Yeah.
Like it still felt a little
Well, and I want to, I think we're getting that point across. Like, I really like this movie. I think we all agree on that. It's just, it doesn't have the energy that a lot of the other ones do.
Right.
I love the idea of the storyline they go through with Ultron himself. Mm-hmm. I really liked Ultron himself. I'm a big James Spader fan anyway.
Yeah.
I can't give him the credit that I can give like a Josh Brolin, who you can really see come through in Thanos. But just from a personality perspective, I really feel like he brought something to like he made him robotic, but also
well he didn't do, he was strictly voice work, right? He didn't do,
he might have done some of the motion capture, I'm not sure. Okay. But I mean with the way the CG comes through, like it doesn't really matter that, you know what I mean? Like
I don't know, I mean we'll get there, but I feel like CG capturing Brolin for Thanos added to it rather than just having a big cartoon Thanos.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, like, you can see Josh Brolin in Thanos, right? Like the way he looks and the way he does. But he's got that with Ultron. Like he doesn't really have the facial expressions so much shine through, so it's not exactly
which I think
the same
is my
level.
point.
Yeah,
like you're right.
So like even if it is James Spader moving, it still looks like Ultron moving around, whereas Thanos looks like big purple Brolin,
right,
moving around. But as far, like I said, as far as giving him personality, I think it was a great mix there, and I think he was I very much enjoyed the times that he got to spar with Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often. The one time in that scene where they all show up when the claw scene you were talking about. As much as that's kind of shoehorned in, I still really love the banter.
Yeah.
When that goes down, there's a couple of parts of that scene I really love. That's also the one, I think that's the one where the Thor throws the hammer and Quicksilver runs by and is like sees it in slow motion. Is like, and tries to grab it and it just gets yanked. Like out of whack. That's also where Hawkeye got over on Scarlet Witch. In that scene. So a lot of cool things happen in that scene. And the one, like the thing I focus on the most probably in this movie that I really enjoy, that I think was a great move, was making Hawkeye the heart of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is the closest thing we're probably going to get to a Hawkeye movie, I would almost say. Like, he's not the biggest character, but he is sort of like the focal point as far as, like, the team goes. Like, he gets a lot of time and a lot of world building of his own. You find out the stuff about his family. They even do those bits at the beginning where they're talking about him having a girlfriend, and he's like, I don't have a girlfriend, because he's got a wife and kids that just nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And they have that really nice scene, I think, with him and his wife where he's basically sitting there talking about, like, they don't need me. And she's like, no, like they specifically do need you because you were that guy. And the scene at the end where they're really hammering it home where he's sitting there with Scarlet Witch and is like, look, there's some crazy stuff going on right now. We're fighting giant robots. I got a bow and arrow. None of this makes sense.
Yeah.
If you need to chill here, that's fine. Don't worry about it. But if you come outside, you got to bring it, because that's what we do here. And I really think that kind of, that is basically the essence of being an Avenger. Like, that really brought that through in a way none of the other characters really have before. Like, we don't know what's happening here, and none of us are really fit to be here individually. But if we all do this, we can do it.
Yeah. And
I think that was a very good move. That was one of the stronger points, whichever.
One of those
of
things.
The movie, yeah.
So I have not an alternate take on that, because I think what they did with Hawkeye is a little glimpse of, like, master filmmakers using our emotions against us. And sort of playing with the different tropes and stuff that we're used to, because they set Hawkeye up to die.
Yeah.
Like, that is his. I mean, he gets shot in that first scene, and they put him together, and they very specifically have a conversation where Scarlet Witch kind of is like, pretending to need this guy brings us together, and Tony Hawk is like, he's. He's flat, or Tony Stark.
He's like, I'm going to bust this 720 right now.
Tony Hawk comes in and does a 720 on his face.
Pandemonium.
Tony Stark says, calls him, says he's flatlined, and he's like, no, I'm going to live forever. I'll be made of plastic, His wife, they tell him be okay. You know what I mean? Like, they set him up this whole movie to die. And we see it happening. I remember watching this movie specifically in the theater, going, it's too bad they're gonna kill Hawkeye. You
should know weed never makes it that easy.
I also yeah.
You're 100% right. I felt all of that stuff, and I thought all the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, looking back, I definitely did.
Yes.
But knowing what we know, we should have known he was the one guy who couldn't die.
Probably.
Because you can be sure of two things. Whedon's going to kill somebody, and you'll never see it coming.
Right. Probably. You're right. But it pays off so well because they set us up to know that Hawkeye dies. But then they still do, like, a really good job of making us really not want Hawkeye to die,
Right.
By showing us his family and the kids and everything. Yeah. So now we're like, man, they're going to kill Hawkeye. This sucks. Thanks. And then we get to the end, and the moment he dies, and I really was watching it this time. They build to it so. I mean, they show him he gets off Sokovia. He's on the helicarrier.
Yeah,
well, he's not on the helicarrier, but he's on one the little ships.
Yeah.
And he sees the kid that he has to go save. And they even show that moment where he's like,
yeah.
And he goes running back out, and he grabs the kid, and that's when Ultron comes by in the Quinjet, and the bullets are like slow motion coming in on him, and he sees them coming and like braces for it, like he knows he's about to die, and then Quicksilver comes in and pushes him out of the way, and Quicksilver gets shot to pieces.
Yeah.
And like that is so it was just such a stomach drop.
Yep.
And it's a stomach drop not because we cared about Quicksilver at all, but because they executed it so well that we appreciate, like, it caught us by surprise.
Mm-hmm.
we appreciate Quicksilver's sacrifice. You know, you're like, you know, because so there's that moment where you're like, and it creates an instant like, oh, thank you, good job, Quicksilver. Oh, you're dead. You know, like, you know, and I really just was like, wow, that was so well done.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, they used everything. They knew exactly how to use it to turn that emotion on us. Because, you know, Quicksilver was a bad guy for half the movie, and even when he wasn't a bad guy, he was kind of a jerk.
I dug him.
Yeah,
he was fine. He was fine, but you did not attach.
No,
he did nothing to endear himself.
Yeah, I wasn't emotionally attached to him.
Right,
it was just fun.
Yep.
I will say I really did enjoy the way they built the twins, also, and the way they. I mean, there's a lot of good storytelling that does go on in this movie. The way that they were set up as bad guys, but then when you actually get that scene where they're talking to Ultron and you find out their motivation, basically, all they want to do is destroy the Avengers because they've got legitimate beef with Stark.
Yeah.
And all of these, you know, throughout this entire series, they do a really good job of making you love Tony Stark, but then reminding you of what a hypocritical d-bag he is,
right.
You know?
Like they brought it back to the missiles with his name on it again.
Yep.
Like it just always comes back to.
They basically said like a missile came into the room, like the second one came in and just laid there.
Well, the
next
first
to
one
them.
came in and killed their parents.
Yeah, and then the second one came in and laid there next to them, not exploding, and they just sat there and stared at Tony Stark's name for 3 days, waiting to die.
Yep.
Yeah,
and it really brought like a level because when they first are introduced, they're just Hydra experiments.
Right.
You know, you got nothing, and then you get this. Then they're teaming up with Ultron, and then you get that scene where they're explaining that's what's going on. And the entire time, even when they are bad guys, like they're being duped.
Yep.
Because Ultron, and that was a great Ultron aspect too, because he legitimately cared about these two.
Yeah.
Like he wants to kill every human on the planet, but he legitimately cares about these two. You know, like he was hurt when they double-crossed him.
Yeah.
And that it's just such a weird way, like, you empathize with this villain who's trying to destroy the entire world, and he's a robot, so there's no reason you should care about him. But there's a moment where he's just sad because his friends are turning their backs on him. You're like, man, they're right to do so, but why do I care right now?
Oh, Ultron was right about us all. Kill us, just kill us. We're jerks.
I really like the portrayal of super speed in this. Mm-hmm. I hated in the X-Men movies when they introduced Quicksilver and the way they portray his super speed like he's like that's the most powerful power in the X-Men movies.
Yeah.
Except for maybe I don't know. I feel like that's the most powerful power in the X-Men movie. He just comes across like omnipotent. Like he just does whatever they need him to do. Oh, Quicksilver does. I mean, he saves everybody from the exploding mansion.
Yeah.
In this one, I felt like it was a little more grounded and a little more, it didn't feel overpowered. It didn't feel like if when I watch the X-Men, I'm like, super strength or super speed ain't that special.
Explosions are also very fast.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like he stops time and does whatever he wants.
Yeah.
In this one, he's just really fast, and I felt like it was a more realistic portrayal of super speed.
Yeah. I will say I like how they've used Scarlet Witch since then. I didn't necessarily love how they used her in this movie because she was just all over the place on the powers. Like they've really pumped up her telekinetic abilities since then, and they've made her very powerful. But like I couldn't tell what was coming and what was going with the way she was like playing with people's minds and whatever, and there just didn't seem to be any consistency to what was happening at all. And I just didn't. I wasn't into any of that really.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't understand. There was a couple times where they tried to make her almost like horror movie villainish.
Yes.
Where, she would back out of a room.
That's the way it was shot. And stuff like that.
And that's why would she?
And it's one of those things, because it's like that happens, and it's like, okay, like is is Tony Stark seeing that happen, or am I just seeing that happen? Because there's no way she actually just backed out of a room like she was the Ring.
Yeah.
So who was that shot for?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And the idea is showing them, tearing them up from the insides. I like. It's just the way it came across in film. I never got it.
Yep.
I had a real hard time explaining what that stuff was to Spencer.
Yeah.
He did not, like, a 5-year-old did not comprehend what any of that meant. And he just kept, like, every time it was happening, he was like, I just kept trying to explain, she's giving him bad dreams. She's giving him bad dreams. And he was still just like, well, how come, like, he didn't understand why it was different for everybody, too. Like, it was kind of exhausting trying to, like, explain all that stuff to him. So, I don't know, like, I never really thought too much of it until I had to try to explain it. And then I was just like, well.
It also gave us that well, first of all, the Thor vision, the one bright spot about the weird vision stuff to me was the little nod they gave to the guys in the background in the Thor vision wearing the wolf mask, the ram mask, and the heart mask. Little angel nod.
Oh, did that? I didn't notice that.
Wow, I didn't notice that. Oh, that's cool.
And I mean, you can look it up online or go back and watch it or whatever. There's sort of the background.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
And honestly, if I hadn't read it online, I never would have noticed what the masks were. But as soon as they said it and showed me the picture, I was like, oh, awesome.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah, exactly. Terrific,
That's cool.
But the movie gave us that weird Thor scene where, like, they're trying to set up the Infinity Stones now.
Yeah.
They're really trying to give us that, but man, that is just shoehorned in there.
Right.
It gives this movie no narrative support whatsoever. It just it's a weird scene. Like, it brings Selvig in. Great. Yep. It's fun to see him, but then he's like, he just goes into a pool and there's some electricity and then there's some Infinity Stones and then we're back to our actual story going, what the?
Yeah, what was that?
That's as weird as if they had, like, sat down and he had some emails, like, on a flash drive with a bunch
of... That's some straight up DC stuff there.
I like it. I will say, like, when they were showing the stones, that was kind of neat because, like, I liked how, like, it showed the Tesseract open up and, like, the stone come out of it, and, like, it showed, like, the ether kind of form into the stone. So, like, it almost, like, visually showed us how all that stuff works as the Infinity Stones. Because at that time, I think there was still a lot of people, like, there was still a lot of question around that. Like,
well, I think the problem is after that, there was still a lot of question.
Well, yeah. But, so this movie told because this is also where we found out that the Mind Stone was what was inside Loki's staff, which is why he was controlling people's minds with the staff. So which
made because I did for sure. I think we all sort of thought that the staff was just powered by the Tesseract.
Yeah, we've talked.
We didn't realize that was two different Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Marvel realized it at that point because even in the first Avengers, Selvig references you can't defend against yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean when he's talking about the Tesseract and the force field around it, they use Loki's staff, and he says that like, oh, it's the same power, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't think they had necessarily decided.
They hadn't decided yet. Yeah, that makes sense. But now we know.
Yep.
Now it's the Mind Stone, and that becomes a big part of what Ultron's hoping to use, right? Because he takes that staff because it's got the Mind Stone in it. Because the whole thing is like he's trying to build himself a better body. Which is what ultimately becomes Vision.
Yep.
That was supposed to be his new body. So that's a really interesting way to bring Vision into the world, I think.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that they made the little gem in Vision's head the Mind Stone, because that's not a thing in the books, right?
Not that
like
I know
he's
of.
got that gem on his head, but it's not an Infinity Stone, I don't think. But it's a really interesting way to bring him into the movie world, I thought. I thought that works out well. And the fact that he's basically just Jarvis. Which is kind of, it works out perfect too, like the actor, like portraying
Paul
Vision.
Bettany's.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So cool.
It's
like
so
and how
Love Paul
great
Bettany.
does that retroactively make getting Paul Bettany for that role in the first place? You
I know, right?
Like, there's no way they saw that in 2008.
Yeah.
They just happened to be like, oh, we already have a guy who's awesome,
Right.
Yeah.
and it fits thematically, so let's just do it.
I kind of love, since we're talking about Vision, the way that he like makes himself look like after he comes out, because he's just like when he first comes out, he's like all purple looking. But after he kind of sits there and he looks at the city for a minute, all of a sudden like he just like gets like the green suit on his body, and then he lands next to Thor and he looks at Thor's cape and then makes himself a cape, and now we've got Vision the way he looks in the comics. I thought that was really fun. And
I loved the bit with Mjolnir there too.
Oh yeah!
Like, how do we even know we can trust this guy? And then he just hands Thor his hammer like it's nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Also, a lot, like you said earlier, a lot of the character interaction stuff in this movie is top notch. That whole party scene at the beginning
is so good.
Yeah, and when they do the bit where everybody's trying to pick up the hammer, I caught a little bit. This is the first time I kind of had this thought, and probably just reading too much into it. But when they do that bit, and Steve Rogers goes to pick it up, and it shifts just a little bit.
Yep.
Did you get any kind of impression that he could have moved it more?
Yeah,
just
totally.
Yeah,
and didn't want to.
Okay, because this is the first time I caught that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
this makes me feel much better.
Yeah.
Because I even went back and rewatched it and went, "How have I never seen that before?"
Yeah.
It's probably just me. So you guys are making me more vindication.
Yeah.
I just love the uneasy look on Thor's face during that whole thing.
Yeah, and because I also wondered too, is like does Thor know he just did him a solid? But I love when they get when Tony and Rhodey both go and get their Iron Man gauntlets. Yeah, they're just trying to like jet power that thing.
And they got like the thrusters going and everything while they're trying.
And they're yelling at each other.
Are you even pulling?
Yep. And then that leads to that whole conversation at the very end too. They're like, you put the hammer on an elevator goes up. Elevator's not worthy.
Yeah,
right. It's like you can just pick it up because he's a machine. That's why.
Oh, yeah, that's good stuff for sure. I was way into that. This movie gave us the Hulkbuster fights.
Yes. Yep.
Which I remember that being a real exciting thing leading into this movie, because they teased us with that in the trailer, and fans got way excited that we were going to see a Hulkbuster versus Hulk fight. That's definitely one of the fun parts of this movie, I'd say. I love that scene.
I love the Veronica code name.
Yeah.
Or whatever, which is not something. It's another thing I read online. I didn't catch myself, but somebody made reference to how that was basically an Archie reference, because the Hulk love interest, Bruce Banner's love interest, is named Betty, and so then they make basically the thing that can actually stop, like the antithesis of that,
right?
And then they call it Veronica.
Wow, I did not realize that. Yeah. That's clever. That's clever.
But all the Stark Banner stuff, as it always is great in this, because they basically create Ultron together.
Yep.
They make reference to the Veronica project, before we ever see it. It was just kind of a neat little scene there where he says something about not basically Stark kind of threatens him with it, and Banner shuts him down, and he's like, "Hey, you helped create it,"
right?
And then we get to see what it is later.
Yeah.
But that fight scene is very. I think it feels a little out of place because it's an offshoot of that claw scene.
Yeah.
But it is one that, like from a story perspective, it didn't feel like it flowed into it perfectly. But then once you got into it, it didn't matter. It's just an awesome action scene.
Yeah.
And this does set up a lot of the how powerful are these guys, and can they be trusted in our world, because they just keep knocking our cities over.
Right. Yeah.
with no warning.
Well, this is a big one for that, right?
Yeah.
Like with Hulk.
And they
going berserker and just wrecking everything and putting people in harm, and
they really played up in the aftermath. I mean, Banner is just done. After this.
Well, like even Hulk gets sad, right? Like, because there's that moment when he kind of snaps out of the Scarlet Witch's stuff, and Hulk's looking around, seeing everybody afraid of him, and even Hulk looks sad.
Yeah.
So like it even affected Hulk, which is kind of awesome. Like even Hulk knows he messed up. But I just love like the Veronica starts with like that little cage that erects around him, and Hulk just like pounds through the ground and comes up around it. I love that. I was like, that is so amazing. And go to sleep when he's just pounding him in the face. And then he gives him that shot, and Hulk just like spits that tooth out and turns and looks at him, and Tony goes, "I'm sorry." That's so good. Yeah, that whole scene was awesome. I love that. Good comic book scene there for sure.
Yep.
Gosh, I don't even know. Any other notes you got?
It was neat seeing the return of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Okay.
Sorta.
Yeah.
The helicarrier and stuff.
Yeah,
Also, did you notice the guy from Winter Soldier that refused to launch the ships?
Yep.
Was on the deck here commanding not necessarily commanding, but he was like one of the head guys.
Locked in,
topped
and
locked,
ready to. It's full of people and ready to fly.
Yeah, that's good.
So most of my notes are just little things that I liked, or that made me laugh. When the Iron Legion shows up in Sokovia, and some dude is just waiting there with a jar of acid to throw on one of them. I was like, is that just a thing in Sokovia? They just don't leave home without jar of acid.
Did you notice they had Spader's voice?
No, I didn't.
They did?
Yep, they were
cool.
basically Ultron's voice.
Oh, cool. That's neat.
Yeah. I love the scene where Iron Man flies in and shoots all those dudes. And, well, he flies in and they're shooting at him, and he's like, hold on, guys, we need to talk this out. And he shoots all of them in the legs.
Yeah.
And he goes, good talk. And that one guy goes, no, it wasn't.
Yeah, that one. No, it wasn't.
Do you have Strucker's line on there?
No.
I love that when he was rallying the troops.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, he's like, can we hold them off? They're the Avengers, you know. But then he's like, all right, we'll never surrender. We'll show them what it is. We'll go get them. And then turns right around and whispers to the guy next to him, "I'm going to prepare to surrender."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to surrender. No, I really like Cap's suit in this.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is one of his best suits, I think.
Yeah. Also, great line from him at the early part there when him and Maria Hill.
No.
No.
Language.
Yeah, that was
That's
hilarious.
A good running joke for the whole movie.
But the probably the capest moment.
Yeah.
For him from a character's perspective when Maria Hill's
Maria
Hill's going over the powers of the twins and stuff like that, and he's saying something. She's basically talking about them like they're bad guys,
right?
And he's going, yeah, who would ever submit to some weird experimentation to help save their country? That is terrible. What kind of monster would do that? And she's like, well, I mean, you're a little different. We were at war. And he's like, so are they?
Yeah. That's on my list.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
I love that.
Sorry to undercut you.
No, it's fine. It doesn't. We're not doing these in any order per se. No, but I love that scene, and that's super Cap.
Yep.
But not Cap as you would think about it, you know. And I think that's one of the things they do really well with Captain America in the MCU, because he does have such a, I think we forget that he's not super patriotic, because he's Captain America, we forget that he's not super patriotic Superman with a shield, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Has his own opinions and sees the world a certain way,
And, he's what patriotism should be.
Yes. Yes. And so it's great when we get those little reminders, because he does say stuff. Yeah, who would ever submit to who would ever volunteer to be experimented on by a German scientist to protect his country?
Yeah.
That's a great. And you're like, well, oh yeah, yeah.
Point well taken.
And then when she says, well, we're not at war, you're like, yeah, oh yeah, we're not at war. And he's like, well, they are. And you're like, oh, yeah, they are. Yeah. It's like a lesson from Cap right there. Sorry, Cap. Yeah. Oh man. I really laugh. I just thought it was great after the Strucker scene. Banner's got a pair of Beats on.
Yeah.
And they're on like a Stark spaceship, essentially. You know what I mean? Like they're the Avengers, but he's got a pair of Beats.
Yeah. Hey, somebody's got to pay for all those Quinjets.
Hey, somebody's. Yep.
He says that though too at one point, right? Like he calls Cap the leader. He's like, I just pay for everything.
I just pay for everything and design everything and make us look cool.
Yeah.
On that scene when they're on the Quinjet, when Widow's trying to calm down Banner, or trying to, comfort Banner.
Yeah.
And she asks Thor,
Yes.
Hulk report, and he's like, the gates of hell are,
Yes.
Ushering in the souls of your enemies or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, he says something about the screams of his defeated enemies. And they give him that look, and he's like, well, not dead souls, injured souls. Yeah. There's a lot of wailing and moaning and complaining of sprained deltoids. Like, that's a funny scene in itself. I think this is the first time I've made sure to notice Captain America standing right behind him, because he just gives him this look like, good job, buddy. Saved it. So I really enjoyed that. I like the way Banner, we mentioned, I like the way Banner interacts with Tony. It's great to see. They do a real good job. Like, Tony always starts to kind of talk down to Banner, and Banner's always like right there with him,
Yep.
And we see Stark talk down to everybody. So, and not in like necessarily a condescending way.
No,
but he's smarter than everybody and has to explain everything.
Yep.
And
he forgets that Banner's an equal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not in a rude way, because man, they are buddy.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yep. So I like seeing that. I laugh every single time in the party scene at both times War Machine is telling his story.
Oh my god, dude! Yeah, that is so amazing.
Yeah,
is this the tank you're looking for?
Yeah,
dude. When everybody starts reacting to it on the second time, when he just looks around and like gives that.
Well, that's another Thor moment too, where he's like, "Oh, is that the end of the story? Well, then it's a very good story." I liked the party scene where Thor and Stark are going over trying to play up their love interests. Like they're basically just having a one-upsmanship about their ladies.
Yeah. My favorite part about that is Thor's closing line is just straight up, Jane's better. It's a great Stan Lee scene there.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
I love when he's
sure.
Yeah. Well, I even loved before when he's got that, I don't know, magical alcohol, whatever it is.
Asgardian booze.
Aged for 1,000 years and
Asgardian apple juice.
Right. Yeah, Asgardian apple juice. Yep. And he gives them a bit.
This was not made for mortal men. Neither was Normandy. I'll just hand it over.
Yeah. It made me wonder if, because in Captain America we get the scene where Cap can't get drunk anymore. Yeah. As much as we see Thor drink, can Thor get drunk?
Oh.
I think on the Asgardian stuff he can.
Okay, so then that made me wonder. So was that stuff getting Cap buzzed? Because he put Cap some.
I was thinking the same thing this time through. It's like that would have been a good scene or a good time to just show Cap a little wobbly or something.
Yeah. So at the end of the party scene, after they do the thing, the first time Ultron shows up. I really like that everybody's getting ready for the fight. Mm-hmm. How many times in an action movie, do we see a clearly ominous being show up making thinly veiled threats, and everybody just is like, "Oh, what's going on? Come on in, sit down. Where are we at?" Like they all jump immediately. We see, Maria Hill pulls a gun. You know what I mean? Like everybody is like, well, this is not a good thing. You know what I mean? So you don't see that super often. So I was watching that and I was kind of like, yeah, hell yeah. I can't even be like, well, you guys had to see that coming. Because normally you're like, man, if some weird half-faced robot walked in there, I would not just be trying to reprogram it.
The way he introduced himself was so wonderfully creepy also, because he just is like this mangled bot, just sort of walks in, and then when they end that whole thing with the creepy Pinocchio stuff, like that.
Well, I even love after the whole fight, and he just goes, well, that was dramatic. Awesome. I noticed Tony says when he's talking about when he wants to build Ultron, he specifically at one point goes, "That's the end game."
Yeah.
You know,
I noticed that too.
You know, when he's talking about you know the aliens coming, he's like, "That's the end game up there."
Yeah.
I just noticed that. Well, I guess that was actually that was probably when he was talking about building Vision because but yeah, so I thought that was just a little neat tidbit. That's pretty much it for me, man. That's all. You know, there's a lot to like about the movie, but it doesn't get super. You know.
Yeah.
It's
the worst Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Still pretty good. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely the lowest tier Avengers movie, I guess, because you have to think about that because it's like, Infinity War is only the third Avengers movie.
Yeah.
So it definitely ranks at the bottom of those Avengers movies. Yes.
I think we also have to acknowledge a bit of the holding pattern that Age of Ultron is.
Yes.
We know we're headed towards the Thanos stuff by now.
Right.
You know, and
and I mean that's there was not really a way to get around. I mean, you could have made a better movie. I'm not saying this is the best it could have been by any means, but there is the fact that you're not introducing it, so you don't have that going for you, and you're building towards something everybody knows is coming. So you're not going to give too many huge surprises or anything like that. Like you just sort of have to exist as a bridge and do what you can.
Well, that's even the thing with the... Were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say that, Ultron's kind of one of those classic Avengers villains, too. So it was really cool to see him do that.
Yeah.
Like they started with Loki in the first Avengers movie, and Loki's like one of the first Avengers main villains. So it was neat to see them follow those steps of like iconic Avengers villains for these movies, and Ultron was a good one to use here as like a segue into the big giant thing that we were getting ready to do. Something we didn't mention is how in the comics Hank Pym is the one that built Ultron, not Tony and Bruce.
Yeah.
So they made that play well into this world. I think making Ultron basically like the evolution of Tony's stuff makes sense in the MCU.
Well, and making him an anti-Tony, I think, was a perfect thing for this movie too, because Tony Stark is at times the biggest villain in the MCU.
He can be,
period.
Yeah.
Like not intentionally necessarily, but man, most of the things that happen that are absolutely terrible are his fault in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
And they play the redemption arc with him a lot, but like he has to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And again, you get those scenes like when the twins are basically talking about how his inventions destroyed their entire world.
Yep.
And it really when you get the things like the conflict that happened in Civil War, where he is just so high and mighty on the damage they've done and this and that. And it's like, dude, you've been doing damage your entire life.
Right.
Like, all of the messes we're cleaning up are mostly your messes.
Right.
All are mostly. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
But you get the point there.
Yeah.
And again, I really like that. I mean, I love the Iron Man character, but I also love when they remind us how terrible he kind of is,
Well, and I also, you got to, in acknowledging that, you have to appreciate that, like, he's aware of that.
Yeah.
And they call that out very clearly in this movie where he goes, we're mad scientists, man. Make peace with it.
Yeah.
When he's talking to Banner.
Banner's like, you made another murder bot?
Yeah. Oh my god. Cool. All right. Well, I think that pretty much puts a caps on.
I guess we could talk. I was gonna bring up the end scene.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Not quite the credit scene. Although it's a total. It's like a total illustration of what's wrong with the movie.
You're talking about not the post-credit scene. You're talking about the actual ending.
I'm talking about the post-credit scene.
Okay, the actual ending first. I wanted to get into because they do kind of the new team roundup there, which I want to point out. This was another one of those almost is because this was being made and finished right around the time that the Sony deal was coming through. The partnership there.
Yeah.
So I think by the time this came out, I believe we knew there was going to be MCU Spider-Man coming. And I remember reading about how like there was almost time to get him in that last shot.
Yeah.
And they ended up not. But that could have been our introduction to Spider-Man in the MCU was basically them going through that scene and Spider-Man just popping up. on the new team thing there, which doesn't necessarily play into what they did with the Spider-Man movie, so it works out fine that it wasn't there. But I remember, like, before we had the actual movie, just reading that news and just being, like, halfway to crush. I was like, oh, God, that would have been such a fanboy moment, had that happen. But we do get the end there, too, where it just trails off into the, you know, like, they're talking about the new recruits. You also get, we didn't mention the Hulk stuff. Because remember, Hulk disappeared after this movie, too. Like,
he got on
that was, and it was a weird, like, conscious Hulk moment. Yeah. Because he, as Hulk, shuts off the comm thing and just keeps going. And they really played up the end of that movie after the big Hulkbuster scene where they destroy that town. Like I said, I mean, Banner's wrecked for the rest of that movie. And even when he goes to save Black Widow, like, his goal is basically, all right, you're safe now. Now we got to get out of here. I just can't do this anymore. Yep. And she basically forces him into hulking out and helping save the day. But at the end, even as Hulk, he consciously decides, can't do this, got to go. And, I mean, they really haven't followed up on that exactly quite yet.
Well, except we know that he never turned back to Banner. Hulk was just in control after that.
Exactly.
Point.
Yeah. But, like, the pairing... I don't know. I mean, it's not like he's Smart Hulk or anything like that yet, or we've talked about what they might be doing coming soon or what they've teased here and there. Yeah. But that's the first time Hulk makes a decision that is more than you know.
More than Smash.
Exactly. I mean, I guess he saved Tony in the first one, so he's done stuff like that. But that one, I mean, like, they drew that out. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a moment he's going through a process and then decides to do that. Yep. And even when you get to Ragnarok, he's still pretty much Hulk. Yeah. Until they banner him down, you know, and stuff like that. So that was kind of a turning point for the character. Yeah. That is worthy of mentioning, I think.
Definitely.
And then the trail off at the very end when they're showing the new recruits and they're going through all that stuff, and you get Captain America and they pan up to him and he's like, Avengers, and then it cuts off.
Right before he says assemble.
Yeah, we still haven't gotten the assemble thing yet.
Yeah.
So, and then post credits.
So and the post credits, as I keep trying to say, is kind of indicative of what's wrong with this movie. You know, the big thing is because it doesn't really fit with the movie at all. Yeah. You know, it is pure. It is done purely for the audience action. Yeah. You know, interaction, because it's Thanos putting on the gauntlet, and going, fine, I'll do it myself. Yeah. And you know, that had nothing to do with Ultron. It had nothing to do with he doesn't even know the Avengers. Well, I guess he knows the Avengers, but you know, like, it just has nothing to do with this movie. Yeah. It's just world building, and it's, you know, basically just a commercial for Infinity War. Yeah, you know?
Because that would have fit better after the first Avengers. Because the first Avengers, they're trying to take over Earth. There's interaction with Infinity Stones. They're you know, it's powering something. They've got stuff that they're doing with it, and then in this one, I mean, they talk about the Infinity Stones, but nobody's looking for them.
Thor makes that comment where he's like, 4 Infinity Stones have shown up in the past however many years. That's not a coincidence. This is somebody's playing a game. He says that specifically. So I guess,
but it's
this
in
was
that weird throwaway scene that nobody understood. It's not like, you know, you get the sense
it's at the end. It's right before he leaves.
It's right before the Avengers Assemble scene.
Yep. Because they ask him if you can find out who. Can you find out what's coming?
Because now Thor's leaving to do the Ragnarok thing. Just like Hulk and Thor both just went to the same place.
No, Thor went back to Asgard.
Yeah, first.
And then got...
Yeah. Then ends up there.
Well,
Thor, we'll talk about it in a couple weeks.
Thor goes hurtling across the galaxy trying to find, and it ends up in Surtur's dungeon.
Oh, yeah.
I can't wait to talk about Ragnarok.
Yeah. I can't wait to watch it again so we can.
Yeah. Awesome.
You know, I think the MCU movies are starting to slip off of Netflix also.
Yeah.
Because Phase 3, the Netflix run started with Civil War on Phase 3, and it's already not on there.
Yeah, so right now you can watch Ragnarok, Ant-Man and Wasp, Infinity War, and Black Panther. Those are the only 4 MCU movies on there. So, the tail end of that phase.
So I gotta find Civil War and Doctor Strange.
Yeah. So those are
all of them.
No, I mean, they're not hard to find. But
you can find it. All right,
guys.
Well, I think that's going to wrap up our look back at Age of Voltron.
Age of Voltron.
Elmo. Say the right name.
Ultron.
There you go.
Age of Ultron. right, guys. Well, hopefully you've been enjoying the show. Make sure you stay tuned because we got a lot more to talk about still, and we are getting so close to Endgame. It's going to be awesome. Really excited about it.
Next up is Ant-Man.
Yep. Go watch
Ant-Man. Get prepared for that. We'll be discussing that very, very soon. Make sure you guys are subscribed to us on YouTube if you watch the video version. If you prefer audio, make sure you follow and rate us on iTunes or Stitcher or Podbean or Google Play or however you prefer to do it. We are all just part of the Geek Easy podcast feed, so you'll find Marvel Good Yay along with our other shows like the main Geek Easy podcast as well as the Streak Easy, which is our podcast about the Undertaker's WrestleMania streak. So lots of good content for you guys. You should definitely check it all out. I think that's going to wrap things up.
I believe so.
All right. So until next time, guys.
Marvel Good Yay.
The Geek Easy Podcast is a production of PixelDan.com. Musical tracks used in the intro and outro are used with full permission of the respective owners or creators. Intro and outro narrations are provided by me, Brian T. Stevenson. PixelDan.com's The Geek Easy Podcast is provided for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those solely of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily represent those of PixelDan.com or any other party. Be sure to join us next time for another installment of the Geek Easy Podcast.